Um, Great. So thank you for joining us. We have Quint here as well. And for today, we are talking about the second stage of the double diamond process. I'm not sure if you were here in the last session or if you know anything about the double diamond process, but today is really, we're going to do a little bit of recap on that first, and then trying to talk about how you can make sense of data and how this design thinking works. So this session is called Design Thinking Toolkit, and it's essentially about how you can make use of the data that you've gathered into making them, turning them into design. So we're just going to start with some basic introduction to back on the double diamond process. We were here yesterday. Is it yesterday? It is. With the discovering and finding data and, going broad with finding different problems, questions. And now we're going to talk about how we can, go about defining the different data. So what does it mean by this kind of, collapsing and restricting flow? It means that whatever data you have, it's a bit lagging. I'm not sure if it's loading. Nope. Yeah, it means whatever data you have, you're going to connect them, synthesize them. You're going to be able to make sense of these. They're going to be messy when you gather them. So for example, in yesterday, we talked about having observations or doing what we call participatory workshops. And in those cases, you're going to have participants showing you how they do things. You're going to have participants telling you how they want things or how they do things. And those are going to be very messy data. So in terms of synthesizing or organizing data and using them to help you design, you have a lot of methods at your disposal, really. The screen's not updating. It's so weird. This is like, I see some part of it updating there.
I wonder if it's like a weird Zoom share screen thing.
Yeah, hopefully. So I'm not sure if Sammy, you're seeing update of all the tools here. It's very overwhelming.
Yeah, I do see it.
Yes. So it is overwhelming. And there's a reason for this, is that these tools, you're not supposed to use all of them. You're not even supposed to use like 5, 10 of them, because these all are only tools, or what we call artifacts, to externalize knowledge. And what I mean by externalizing knowledge is that whatever you are hearing, whatever you're observing, seeing, understanding, and empathizing, you're going to turn them into something visible to help other people understand it as well. Because you are going to remember the stories of how one participant told you that they don't want to do recycling because they think they think they have the time for it, but they're too lazy for it. Or you're not gonna, you're gonna remember all these stories of how people told you things, how people showed you how they did things. But no one else is gonna know that. You can't just use the quotes because they are not gonna be helpful in understanding the whole context. So what you really want to do is to externalize the knowledge and to communicate what you understand, what you empathize with, and what you find insightful effectively. So with that, we're going to just talk a few tools today, just mainly 3. We also have another tool called design questions, or sometimes we call it how might we, but that's for later. For now, let's talk about how we are going to be able to find out who our users are, think about what they go through, and how they make decisions. So knowing all these 3 are going to help you it's going to help you gain a basic understanding of what you are designing and who you're designing for. So especially also why you're designing. The first one, identifying users. User segmentation is a term we use to say that you're gonna divide up your user groups and see how you're gonna design for them, and which groups you're focusing on, which groups you're designing for and designing with. And by that, you're really going to try to figure out what problems are they really facing, and what do they think, hear, say, feel, and act. So that's like the traditional empathy map we say with the 4 dimensions of what people think, hear, say, feel, act. Why do we want to even understand these? Well, in designing, like we said yesterday, you're trying to find fit between different things. The slide's not fully loading yet, but you're trying to find fit between the problem, the users, and the solution provider. Oh, it's loading.
I'm gonna try to do something real quick with
Yeah.
that.
So in the middle, you see that there's the solution here, and the solution is gonna be okay. Is it
Yeah, we'll see
updating? Is it better?
We'll see.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Clint. So you're trying to find fit between these different stakeholders, problems, and the users, essentially. And in the middle is the solution. So by understanding who your users are, i.e. doing the user segmentation, it's going to help you in understanding the problem fit and the user fit. So this is an example persona done by a Nielsen-Norman group. You're going to have to see this. It's very text-heavy, text-based. And there's really no way to get past that to make them very, very, very visual, because you're really going to externalize these knowledge by showing what they did, what they want, what they feel, what they act. And in seeing personas, sometimes you will see some other students as scared. I'm not seeing in the poster here, thank God. Sometimes you see students as scared doing personas, or not just scared, but people from boot camps doing personas with, say, a matrix of the tools they use. You know, they use Apple, they use iPhone, they use they use these kind of tools or softwares, and they are like digitally savvy. Whatever thing it is, you need to think about if they're really helpful. What is it going to help you learn or understand if you know that they use iPhone? That's not really helpful for you, right? And you're really trying to use personas to help you find new insights. So try to think of it like this. In creating these personas, you're going to have to think about the behavioral considerations, which I highlighted here. You're going to think about what they feel frustrated about, what their goals are, and what their tasks to do are. These are the four main basic components there. You don't have to have anything else if you have these four, to be honest, because these four are the ones that really truly help you in, one, designing for them and with them, and two, helping other people understand why you make these design decisions. Saying to other people that this person uses Amazon, iPhone, and whatever thing it is, and just showing these demographic data is not going to be helpful unless you include the reasons. They use Amazon because they want this and that. It reflects their values. So remember, doing persona is going to be a way for you to personify the struggles and needs. They have to be based on real qualitative data. There are a lot of ways that people will combine data together, and there are a lot of scientific ways, you know, even affinity diagramming, or sometimes with thematic analysis. We have a lot of methods to synthesize data in qualitative research, but those are very complicated, and I don't suppose they will be helpful in talking about it in this 1 hour session. So just remember that persona is not really an exact science. You need to look through your data and then try to connect the dots together yourself. Use the creativity and storytelling skills to make sure that you're telling the story of this group of users. So you can feel free to just piece different items together. You're gonna see different type of people throughout your observation and research. And you're also gonna see similar people throughout your research. They are gonna be similar in terms of the values. They're gonna be similar in terms of the behavior, for example. And you're trying to connect those dots together and create these personifications, these personas, in helping other people understand what types of users there are. So in terms of creating like better personas, or even creating good personas in general, what I recommend is that first of one is that you can create some proto personas first. I'm going to talk about this just in a minute. Second one is that you can only create the portions of personas that help you design. So for example, you don't need to show what software they use. You don't need to show even their age. Age sometimes don't matter. gender, biological sex, these sometimes don't matter. You want the behavior, the attitudes, and how they act. And the third one is that we have some other ways to frame personas in helping you understand and segment the users. So let's talk about the proto persona first. Proto personas are essentially very basic personas and basic user groups that you're identifying without proper data. So this will happen when you only have hypotheses or assumptions, or when you only have 1 or 2 interviews done so far. So in that case, you can create proto personas and use them to show what you guess would be your users. And as you gain data, it's going to help you in refining them. You're going to change the data, you're going to update them, you're going to regroup them, you're going to separate different groups of users and make sure that you're getting a more accurate representation of who you're designing for. Now, think about personas as the examples we just showed here, this one. Now, it shows what Rosa would behave, what Rosa feels frustrated about, what Rosa wants to achieve. But are these really, really always accurate in Rosa's life? So if you think about this, even for yourself, you right now versus you in 10 years are going to have so many different behaviors and so many different new values, new things, activities that happen and things that happen that you are gonna change in some way. You know, right now, I wouldn't think of buying a home. I would only think about renting. But in 10 years' time, I would, maybe. So in that case, you need to think about this, is that people are inherently biological and changing. So instead of just doing personas, what I would actually recommend you doing is that get into the designer and researcher mindset and do mindset segmentation. Mindset segmentation is essentially a way for you to not frame them as a person, but as a group of people in a certain stage that's going to think, act, behave in certain ways. So this is one example from Freeort, a very, very famous design consultancy. They were doing a research on financial mindsets, how to design for people who are gonna act, think, and want different things from a bank. So think about this. They segmented these into different spectrums. One spectrum would be there are people who are going to have a high structure in terms of doing financial management, and there are going to be people who have low structures. There are going to be people who think broader into the future, and there are people who are going to think about right now. And this problem, or the problem with just using persona, is that your persona would actually jump between these different segments. So for example, for now, even for myself, I might be thinking about the more narrow scope, and I still follow a low structure because I don't really have that financial responsibility. But in the coming future, I'm going to have more financial responsibilities, and I'm going to need to change and jump into different segments. And that's not even something I would purposefully change. It's just that it happens with life. So if you only design a persona, you're not going to see, not going to be able to externalize how that person's going to change. But with this mindset segmentation, you can actually very easily try to just map out the spectrums, put them in a matrix, and you're going to see your users moving between the different quadrants over time. So for example, in this one, Fiat summarized them into different groups. Like the people who think wider scope and with a high structure will be the high achievers. The people who have high structure but thinking about the present would more be the balancers. Now you can see that these are the names they apply to them. You can name them anyway. You can even name them with actual human names. But this is a good way for designers and stakeholders, especially the judges in startup, to understand why you're designing for something. Because telling people that Rosa wants this, Jack wants this, it's not helpful. It's only helpful for your teammates or for other stakeholders who are not familiar with designs to understand and to personify the different struggles. If you're talking to designers, archetypes or mindset segmentations would actually be the best way you can show them of your thought processes. So one principle of mindset segmentation, and this is something worth note taking, is that mindsets are mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive, meaning that when you put them into this matrix, these different types of mindsets are going to be mutually exclusive in the way that I cannot be high structure and low structure at the same time, or I cannot be having a wider scope and narrow scope at the same time. I must jump between these different things over time if I want to change. So for example, maybe at this moment, I would be in the narrow scope and low structure, but after I graduate, I would move into narrow scope and high structure because of that change in life. So you're going to see how people jump between these different segments and mindsets. And remember this principle, and it's going to help you a lot. So we're going to have some exercises at the end of this presentation just to help you in doing your project. I'm guessing you're already going to have some topics that you're thinking about and the user groups that you have. So we can help you through that. And because it's we only have one person here, we can have a very, very personal tutor in some way to help you in processing your data and getting through your research process. But let's go back a bit. We talk about techniques in segmenting users or how you're gonna divide them in different mindsets. But why are you even segmenting them, right? Just to remember, your goal is not to show off. You're not showing off visual designs. You're not showing off, hey, we have personas, hey, we have mindset, archetypes. These are just tools to externalize your knowledge and help you in understanding them, empathizing with them, and designing better solutions. So in terms of the user segmentations, let's say you now know who your users are in some cases, but you're not gonna need to understand the struggles further, right? You want to understand the stories they go through. So there are mainly two ways you can do that. One is called journey mapping, and the other is called decision-making tree, or famously called the 5 whys. Now, this is kind of a structure for journey maps. It's essentially a map or a visual asset with 3 main zones. One is that you're setting up the context. Who is it that's going through this journey? And what's the scenario here? And the second zone is the story. What does that person go through? What do they see? What do they think? What do they hear? What do they say? And how do they act? And in the zone Z, you're going to have the insights, opportunities. And what you are going to do, and you can try to do this, is that you don't even need to interview 5-10 users in order to make the journey map. Right after you interview or observe the first user, go make this right away. And you're going to keep adding different data. If you see something that's completely different, a different journey, put it in a new map. Create different maps. And it helps you in understanding the stories they go through, what they have to do, what they have to experience, and how you can help them with the opportunities in the zone C. So I just want to kind of pause a little bit, just a little bit, in asking if you have any questions or concerns based on just the users and the journey map, because that's a lot to take. And I'm still talking kind of theoretical thing and didn't really tell you how exactly you can put the data in. So I'm just wondering if you have any questions, anything, feel free to put it on chat or just say it out loud.
So I don't have any questions, but I definitely do feel like, yes, it's very theoretical and I'm not quite sure how I would apply it. I am just coming off this 5 minutes off of my first interview. So I do have 2 interviews that I could do this for right now. So yeah.
Oh, awesome. You say you have an interview in 5 minutes?
No, I just did an interview, I think 5 minutes before this session started.
That's good. Okay.
I have data we could use.
Yeah, good to know. You know what? It's only 22 past 5. I think we're gonna have 15 or 10 minutes in the end for the Q&A, and we can use that time to look at the data that you have and see how we can put them into the user segmentations, journey maps, and different
Awesome.
tools that we can use.
Cool. Thank you.
So in terms of talking about journey maps, you're gonna map the data that you have on. So for example, if you hear a story about a person, I don't know what your topic is, but I'm gonna use back the example I had yesterday with the waste, designing for waste, for example. If you want to talk about the journey from them purchasing to them discarding something, you're gonna have that as your scope, and you're gonna put down the experiences in between. When they're buying things, what are the considerations? How do they feel? And this journey map is actually also going to help you in doing better research in the coming future, because you're going to be able to know what your scope is, what you're missing, and what you're trying to fill in. Journey map also has two main versions. One is the current state and one is the future state. There are a lot more variations of journey maps, like the service blueprint and different stuff that I'm not going to go into. You can look into that if you're interested in it. But in designing journey maps and making journey maps, you're going to have two types here. One is the current state, and that is going to be heavily based on research that you have, based on real data. And as for the future state, it requires more creativity. What do they really want? How are you going to design a future state, a better state, where they can experience this journey, this story, this your product or service in a much better way? So this slide again will be shared with you, so you can take screenshot of it, or you can just go refer back to this to help you in understanding what the goals of these different journey maps or even the mindset segmentations are. So in terms of creating journey maps, good journey maps or better journey maps, we are going to see different tips that are similar from when you're doing research. You're really trying to separate assumptions with actual data, because you don't want to bias yourself. You don't want to bias the data that you have. And second one, you're not really just externalizing or putting the data into a visual format. You're actually writing a story. You're retelling a story. You're not just saying that this person has this struggle. You want to explain how they have this struggle, why they have this struggle, and what might help them. So design a journey map as if you're creating a character in a fiction, as if you're creating a character in a fiction and trying to go through that emotional journey with them. Take the people, when you're presenting these, take your stakeholders and the judges through this in an engaging storytelling way, so that they can understand the particular part that you're trying to solve for. And most importantly, this is the same thing that applies to any kind of design artifact or research artifact, is that you want that to lead to actions and results. If that is just a thing you're doing to show off, to say, I have this, it's not helpful, because you have this, but no one's going to use this. You want to do that so that you can use it and actually turn them into something that's valuable. By doing this, you're going to be a step ahead. Because what you're going to see is that a lot of students, a lot of people, even a lot of designers, myself included in the past, you're going to do things just for the sake of doing it. You're going to do interview just for the sake of doing interviews. You're going to do journey maps just for the sake of doing journey maps, and not actually thinking what they actually do or how they help or not. So make sure that you're designing to get good results, designing to get actionable results. And so, in terms of having journey maps and user segments, you're going to start to understand the story and who they are. But you're not necessarily tapping into the thought processes there. So in that case, there's a tool that is very helpful that we call 5 Whys. And it runs something like this. You start with a problem that you don't really know the deeper reasons for. And you're going to say someone ran through a red light. And you're going to start to talk about why that happened, and you're going to dig deeper, and finding that, oh, it's actually because you forgot about it. And So that you can even dig deeper into why they forgot about it. It could be the cognitive limitations in humans. And in that case, you can try to figure out from that root cause, could this root cause other problems? You know, sometimes you will start with a very narrow problem. And not just this. For example, yesterday, there was a student who asked something about designing for energy waste. For example, all those toxic water and waste generated by a power generator. They want to solve that, and that's a fantastic topic. So they have to dig deeper into why that happened. You're not just solving that as a problem, you're trying to find out why that is a problem. Ask yourself at least 5 times, and you're going to try to see at which level are you going to solve the problem for and how you're going to approach it. So instead of showing you more examples, I think it would be helpful if we actually do it, So now let's start with a problem that you have. What's the problem that you and your team are trying to solve?
Fantastic question. I'm gonna say excess screen time.
Excess screen time. Fantastic. So the problem is that people are spending too much time on screen. Why is that so?
Because social media is addictive.
Why is social media addictive?
Because the AIs are designed that way.
And why are those AIs designed that way?
Because someone can profit.
And why is that the case?
I mean, people want money. I don't know.
So we're seeing something more about like corporate interests, I don't know, capitalism or something like that. So that's fantastic. Now, here's the thing. Even though this is something we would call like the root cause or something, it's not necessarily the level of the problem you're solving for. So if you're talking about the level of whys we just talked about, one is that people are spending too much time on screen. You can just solve that right away sometimes. But by doing 5 whys, you're going to see the different layers of the issue. For example, the first why you said, because social medias are addictive. That is also a problem you can solve, right? And why is social media addictive? Because the AIs are generating that. So you're going to try to see, is there any way I can solve the problem with AI in general? AI trying to manipulate our lives in this way, or if you want to dig into more systemic issues of why the AIs are designed that way, you can go think about these and really try to find out which layer you're the most interested in. So maybe excess screen time is not something that you're most interested in. Maybe even one layer up, what excess screen time will cause. So 5 why doesn't just go down into deeper levels, it also goes up. So because you have excess screen time, you're gonna have this and that. So maybe you want to solve that, right? So 5 why is really just one tool that you can use to dig into different levels. Sometimes people would say, we're gonna do 5 whys and we're gonna just solve the root cause. And that's incorrect, and that's not a good behavior. Because problems can have multitude of levels and multitude of complexity. And you don't want to risk diving too deep or too shallow. The technique of doing 5 whys is really a way for you to understand the problem better and try to go check what is your opportunity space. So that's really it. There are also other artifacts that are really helpful for you in externalizing your research and your problems. Sometimes they're called problem definition statements. Some of them would be value proposition canvas or stakeholder mapping. You can go Google search them. I'm not going to go too deep into that because that also requires some other knowledge that I think Quint actually may have covered in the business model seminar, which happened already. So no, I'll just leave it here. And thank you for joining. The reason I kind of left like half an hour is that I was trying to see if we can go do that together. and try to get everyone to talk about the problem and see if we can try to externalize the knowledge. But you know, one-to-one, that's fantastic. You get half an hour with me for that, and we can go talk about different problems, and I will try to, you know, we can talk about how we can externalize the knowledge and the data that you have already. So maybe you can talk a bit about the interview that you have, do a little bit debriefing, you know, and help us understand a bit of the problem space, and we can go try to see which, like, where you want to start with.
Yeah, totally. So my team is planning on doing this tomorrow, and myself, and I actually have a teammate with me, McKenna, we are not from a UX background, so we came to this seminar to sort of like understand what we're walking into tomorrow. But just before I had, as I said, like an interview that I did. So our problem space right now, we've kind of narrowed it in, I would say, to, like I said earlier, social media, like use and like general like screen time. But we're sort of waiting for the data to inform us on what direction we should go in and like what the actual problem is from there. I don't know if I could like share my screen with the interview answers, if that's helpful, or I'm not sure where.
Maybe I can pause or stop recording so that no one else will see what
Yeah, I think
their
that might
stuff.
be
Yeah, so let's stop recording so you can show me